Hello, friends. Welcome to the Bincast, where small talk comes to die. I just finished a fantastic podcast with Leanne Millian, and now we get to speak to her husband, Greg Millian. So, Greg, thank you for joining us on the podcast, the Bincast.
Well, thank you for inviting me. It's a pleasure to see you again, and it's nice to be here. And yeah, it's a gorgeous day outside, so who can complain?
It is, and it's funny that you and I can say that because we're looking outside in the same city, so we know exactly what it is, right?
Yeah, exactly, exactly. It's a gorgeous day in Calgary. Put it that way.
Now, how long have you been in Calgary for?
Uh, 14 or 15 years, 2006, so 14 years.
So that's long enough. Give our listening audience just a forecast of what usually happens around this time, the uncertainty of what's different. Yeah, just go ahead and tell a little bit about
Well,
that.
yeah, well, this year, in my experience, this year we actually got a fall. Last
I know.
year we got like, I don't know, what was it, like 10 inches, 12 inches of snow dumped on us at the beginning of
September.
September. And then so we didn't get a fall at all. Like I was raking my leaves, my fall leaves at the beginning of spring this year.
Yeah,
So yeah, so for sure we're actually finally getting a fall, which has been gorgeous.
yeah,
But probably by the end of October, by Halloween, it's usually snow on the ground.
yeah.
So, and the temperatures will slowly start to go down. So,
It's already started dipping a wee bit. I felt just a
yeah.
slight chill, but fantastic still to have sunny days like this. So now, Greg, you are the second one featured on my podcast, the Bincast, as in that we've actually met in person in a
Mhm.
very like in a friendship context, and so it's delightful to bring friends on here who have had a chance to sit down with, have interactions with. So I'm thrilled that you're on here. You and Leanne have some spheres in which she's just given us some insights into how big of an impact you've played in her life and her development, and so I can't wait to like get to know you a little bit better, even more than I do.
Wow.
But
Thank
for our listening audience, let me just start off by asking you to give us some snapshots about who you are, what you stand for, how you've come to this point in life, where you came from, that kind of thing.
Okay. Yeah. So, I identify as a cis gendered male, which means that the sex that I was born with aligns with the genitals that I have. So I'm a man. Um, uh, I mean, like I said, I've been in Calgary for 14 years. I'm from the U.S. originally. I'm 51 years old, married to Leanne. Um, uh, in terms of what do I stand for? Well, I think it's a fairly straightforward concept of personal responsibility. I believe that it's our responsibility as individuals to make sure that we're doing everything we can to create a safe space for the people around us, especially people that have been marginalized or victimized in some way.
Mm-hmm.
People who, so that would include, I'll back up for a second here. And I always say that I am the most privileged and entitled human being on the planet simply because of the fact that I'm white, I am male, I was born in North America. Those three things alone make me the most privileged and frankly, the most entitled human being on the planet. I will never know what the experiences of women, people of color, indigenous people are ever. I will never know those experiences firsthand. So I believe it's my personal responsibility to align myself with them as an ally to be able to take my privilege and this entitlement that has been given to me because I didn't earn it. I was lucky enough to be born a white dude in North
Mm-hmm.
America. So
Mm-hmm.
how can I take that and how can I be an ally to those that are less fortunate, to those that have to deal with victimization and a culture that stigmatizes certain people just based upon their race or their gender, or how they identify their gender. So that's kind of my my mission, my goal, I guess, as it were. And one of the places that I believe that we can start to do that is in our emotional capacities. How can we master our emotions? I've struggled with my emotions my entire life. I've been diagnosed with emotional dysregulation, depression, anxiety.
Mm-hmm.
So I've struggled with my emotions my whole life, and I feel like it's the one thing that we all have in common as human beings is we
Mm-hmm.
all feel something, and we're feeling something constantly. So maybe that's the way in.
Okay.
Maybe that's the way in for us to connect and to
Mm.
start really
I see
making
where
an impact and a difference.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Did you move to Canada about 14, 15 years ago? Did you move straight to Calgary from the
Yeah.
US?
Yeah.
Gotcha. Um, and so most of your life was, for the most part, in the US.
Yep.
Gotcha, gotcha. And what did you do before you came to Canada? What sort of did that forecast there look like?
What did I do before I came to Canada? Well, my
Yeah.
career, I guess what I did was I've been in sales, marketing, and management for most of my adult life in one form or fashion.
Hmm.
Selling everything from doors and windows and lawn care to back in the big dot-com boom to websites and what they used to call large pipe access for internet and stuff like that back when they were actually building the internet that we now all love and use and take for granted today.
Cool.
So I've done everything in regards to that. And yeah, I mean I've been in sales and stuff.
Tell
So
me
yeah,
about
so
your
that's
family as well. Are you the
sure.
only child? Are you one of many
I I
siblings?
am I am now the only child. My brother passed away in February of '98. He died.
Okay.
He was
Okay.
a year and a half older than me, and he died suddenly of a cerebral aneurysm while he was hanging drywall.
Wow.
Yeah,
Unexpected.
very unexpected. Yeah, I didn't see it coming at all. And so I was 28, he was 29 at the time, and needless to say, my 30th birthday was interesting because it was the day that I became older than my older brother. So
Interesting. Interesting. Were you guys close as well?
we had been close on and off throughout our life, but when he died, we were not. He was making some decisions and choices in his life that I couldn't align myself with at the time, and I
Yeah.
was also, frankly, a, a very, very judgmental person at that time in my life. I was a very difficult person to be around,
Mm,
and so I made a lot of judgments about him and his decisions in his life, and I wasn't able to find a space of empathy for him.
mhm.
And so we had some pretty harsh words a couple of weeks before he died. I
Mm,
and forgive me, my memory is this was 30 years ago or however long it's
sure.
been, but my
Sure.
memory
Sure.
is challenged these days. But
Mm,
I believe that we met one other time after that for a dinner with my father, and then that was the last time that I saw him.
okay. Um, I'm thinking about my listening audience who may be able to relate with you in similar circumstances. Did you
Mhm.
ever feel guilt about the way things were left off with your brother? And if so, did you have a way of processing it and going through that?
Well, you asked the question as if it was in the past, and the fact is that I still do.
Okay.
I still struggle with guilt. I still struggle with, you know, I could have done things differently. I should have
Mm,
been less judgmental. All of that
yeah,
stuff, but I, I
exactly.
can't take it back. I can't, rewind the clock and do it again. And
Yeah.
if I could, I would. But then I also say, would I? Because it's been a pretty
Mm,
significant experience for me.
sure.
He still would have died even if I hadn't been a jerk to him 2 weeks
Hmm.
beforehand. So I didn't
Yeah.
cause his death, but I also there's a level of guilt there that happens in that I could have been a better brother to him.
Hmm.
So,
Sure.
but I had a lot of pain around him because
Sure.
growing up, he was my older brother, my protector,
Mm,
and when I saw him starting to go down the roads that he was going down and making the choices that he was making, I
mm,
felt I felt less safe. I felt less secure around him, and
mhm.
so I got angry about that. Instead
Gotcha.
of instead of I didn't have the tools that I have today with being able to express my emotions in an articulate way and being intelligent about it and stuff. So I just became very reactive, and so did he.
Yeah.
I mean,
When you,
we
so
were
go
we were
ahead.
young, we were young.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Um, when you moved from the States to Canada, was there any significant cultural shifts you had to navigate to acclimatize here, or was it very fairly similar?
Fairly similar.
Fairly similar. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, there's not really a whole lot of difference.
Right.
I would say that Canada is maybe a bit more open-minded as a whole. There's
Mhm.
definite separation between church and state here.
Yeah.
Uh, Not a whole lot of politicians, at least that I'm aware of, are running or even making mention about their religious beliefs a whole lot. It
Mhm.
doesn't really come up in
Mhm.
in the political venues, as it were. Whereas in the
Yeah.
States, it's a very important thing, as we're seeing. With it's very
Mhm.
God and country kind of stuff. Whereas in Canada, I don't see that as much.
Right, right, right. Yeah.
How about you? Do you see it?
That's a great question, actually. I've never actually reflected on that. I definitely see it as you're mentioning it, where even though the president may not be a believer, there's still that catchphrase of God bless America, So it's almost like one of those codified ways of expectations that seems in the political system there.
Yeah.
That if you don't say it, it's like, how dare you not include that, even if you don't believe in it, right? Versus here in Canada, where yeah, you don't see that. It's just there. It would be out of place. It would seem to
Yeah.
incorporate that element there, right?
I mean, I guess the
And
only element really there is the God save the Queen, but that's not really, yeah, right. So,
I see that too.
yeah,
Yeah, that's intriguing. I like thinking about the words we speak, Greg, and the meaning behind them. And sometimes we just kind of say things in a way that we're like, okay, we say these things, but we're not sure of the significance or how it evolves or what kind of part it plays today, right? And
I agree
I haven't really
completely.
thought about that. That's so good. Yeah. So you moved to Canada. Did you move straight to Calgary when you came to Canada, or are there a few other places that you
No,
jumped
straight here.
straight here to Calgary? Awesome. Um, and then when you came here, what brought you here in the first place? Why Calgary out of all this
Uh,
vast did you
well,
choose?
yeah. So it was my now ex-wife.
Okay.
She was, yeah. I was living in Los Angeles at the time, and she was living here, and we met on MySpace. Do you remember MySpace?
I remember MySpace.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, we met on MySpace and
Yeah.
we connected right away and
Yeah.
fell in love. And so she has three daughters, so it was easier. I didn't have any kids, so it was easier for me to move here than for her to move down there. So I moved up here.
Okay. So that settled here. And now that you're here, have you been content with Calgary, or have you thought,
Absolutely.
you
Yeah, I
have?
love Calgary. Yeah, Calgary's my home. I've lived in Calgary for 14 years, and it's the longest place I've ever lived
Okay. Okay.
in my
Yeah, I
life. Yeah.
just moved back to Calgary about a year ago here, just over a year ago, and definitely I'm quite happy here just because of all that it incorporates from the city life, which I think I'm more inclined to the vast landscapes around the city, which are breathtaking.
Yeah, it's
The sky,
beautiful.
oh, I know, I totally agree too. Um, you said your ex-wife was the reason you came here. It made me wonder because I mean I also have an ex-wife as well too. What did you learn about yourself after you became single again that you missed along the way that you're like, this is a really significant lesson as I go forward and considering my frame, my makeup.
Um, that's a really good question. I have to say that the single biggest thing that I learned is the value of effective emotional communication in a relationship,
Mm,
and also the value of being connected with yourself emotionally. Um,
mm-hmm,
I
mm,
see that most disconnects in relationships happen because we're no longer willing or able to create safe spaces for the people in our lives. So we
mm,
oftentimes, that's where the disconnect starts to slowly sort of kind of, that's where the relationship starts to kind of unravel slowly, is in that it becomes contentious or it becomes difficult and challenging. And rather than stepping into that together, it becomes, sort of about animosity and you're right and I'm wrong, rather than, okay, how can we navigate through this together to come out
mm,
on the other end of it with something that makes both of us feel good, you know?
mm,
So I was very challenged in my previous relationship with doing that. I'm
mm,
not going to speak for my ex-wife because I don't feel that that's fair,
mm,
but I know
no.
for me personally, I was very challenged in that regard.
Mm,
I felt oftentimes very disconnected,
mm,
um, and it was quite hard and challenging and difficult. I do know that she and I are in a much better place now. She's
mm,
living her life and she's incredibly happy with it. Same here. I mean, I remarried and I'm madly
mm,
in love with Leanne, and we're
mm,
living a good life and stuff. So it's wonderful. So it worked out for the best for everybody. But
yeah.
I'd say the biggest takeaway is that emotional piece is really
Mm,
stepping into it and becoming aware of it and making sure that you have a good grasp on your emotional intellect and articulation. And it's hard. I mean, I'll mention
Yeah.
it. It's not easy because
Yeah.
we're not
Yeah.
taught how to do it.
Right. Right. Yeah.
You know,
So okay, let me describe a circumstance for you. You would say we all have needs, as far as emotional needs, community, social interaction, that kind of thing. And it's a valid thing to desire being with a mate, to have a relationship with someone who you can share intimacy with. What happens to an individual who's not quite ready internally, as you were saying, to be, if that's how I know how to effectively communicate with oneself first, even as they practice practicing with someone else, but they still have that strong desire and urge to be in a relationship just because it feels good. What would you say to that individual, Greg?
so if I understand what you're asking, you're saying that there's somebody that might not be completely comfortable with their emotions and how to express them,
Hmm.
and they want to get into a relationship with somebody else,
Hmm.
but they don't quite know what to do with that sort of piece of themselves. Is that accurate?
Yes, that they haven't quite worked on the internal, but they want to proceed with the
Okay,
connect with
okay,
someone else.
okay, good. So,
Yeah,
I'm sure you've heard of the phrase that you can't love somebody else until you love yourself.
I've heard that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a bunch of crap.
Okay. Oh, tell me more. Here we go. That's good.
Well, I mean, I don't particularly love myself most days, but
Okay.
I'm madly in love with the people in my life. I'm
Mm,
madly in love with my wife. I'm madly in love with my friends and my partner. Like, I'm really, 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 really connected to my family. So I
mm,
know how I'm capable of loving. It just doesn't
mm,
always mean that I know how to receive love very well.
mm,
So what I would say to that particular person that's struggling with their emotional capacities and how to deal with them is
mm,
find a tool, find something, write,
mm,
find a therapist, find a
mm,
coach, find somebody that you can talk to about your emotions and work
mm.
on yourself. But don't give up on making connections with other people simply because you don't feel completely 100% solid,
I see.
right? Because the way we
Yeah.
become solid is we become
Mhm,
solid through these experiences with other people. Because I'll be honest with you, I'm going to guess, and this is a guess, but I'm going to guess that the people that we're connecting with
mhm.
probably don't feel much more solid about their emotional capacities than we do.
I
Maybe
see.
some people are more articulate and some people are more intelligent about them and they have more tools in their kit. But if
Mhm,
you find somebody that's willing to work with you and
mm,
create safe spaces together for each of you to grow
mm.
to your most magnificent capacities, then
Sure.
that's all we could ever ask for.
Helpful. Helpful. Yeah.
Right? So I wouldn't suggest not doing it. I wouldn't suggest not connecting. In fact, I would suggest connecting more.
Mm,
Connect with
okay.
more people, get out there and be vulnerable, right? Because there's a really, 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 really powerful strength in vulnerability, because
Mm,
again, it's the one thing that connects us all as human beings.
mhm,
We're all scared shitless to do most of the stuff that we do every day, you
mhm.
know.
Yeah.
I do public speaking, but apparently
Yeah.
that's at the top of the list of the most um, uh, the biggest fears that most people have, but it's
Mhm.
not
Yeah.
for me. So I
Yeah.
can teach other people how to do it. Do you know what I mean?
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
you can find somebody else in your life who's really, really good at being emotionally articulate and say,
Mm,
hey, can you help me be more emotionally articulate, both
mm,
internally and externally?
mhm.
Right?
So good. So good. That's really helpful. So in essence, you're saying don't try to become perfect first before you go looking, because you're never
No,
going to get
because
there.
you're never going to
Humbly
get
going
there.
forward. Right.
Perfect is
Humbly right
impossible.
forward. I
And,
see what you mean.
and frankly, perfect is disinteresting.
Mm.
It really is. Could you imagine somebody being perfect and being around that person? I'd be pissed off all the time.
Yeah, I see your
Right?
point.
You know, I'd be like, I don't want to be around you. You make me look bad at everything. Like, who wants to be around that person?
Here's something I've experienced just in my experience along the way here. I've made some videos along the way, Greg, where I say I know that I give a really good first impression, and I work really hard to lead with my weakness. And so I have to actively share, hey, here's how I'm struggling through this, or here's when I'm not on my game, or just again to be able to give that presentation that it's not all well put together. Even though I may seem well put together, I'm still fumbling my way forward. And I find for me, learning to lead with my weakness, in essence, has been my way of sharing my humanity with someone else and inviting them into that same process as well too. So yeah, I really resonate with what you're saying there.
I love that, actually, learning to lead with your weakness. That's brilliant, because Brene Brown talks about vulnerability, and you know, when we think about the people in our lives that we admire. I mean, for me, I admire Brene Brown. I admire. I'm a huge music fan, and music is all about leading with your weakness. It
Mm,
really is. It's all about showing up and pouring your heart into something and then giving it to the world and hoping that
yeah,
somebody in the world is going to love it and resonate with it,
yeah,
right? So that if
yeah.
that's not leading with weakness, I don't know what is. So
Mm,
really, that's where great power and strength can come from, is because the
mm,
more we lead with those weaknesses, the
mm-hmm,
more we understand that that is what people want to see and want to know about us. They're less interested in what we do right and more interested in how we deal with the things that we don't get right.
mm.
You know what I mean?
Sounds paradoxical, doesn't it?
It does. It does. Because we're told constantly that everything has to be perfect, and you have to be as men, you have to be big and strong, and you can't be effeminate, and you can't be this, and you got to fit into the man box, and you have to, there's so many things that we have to do as men. Again, I'm speaking for men because I'm not a woman and I'm not a person of color, so I don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But I know that my experience says that if I'm going to lead with my strengths all the time, I'm never really going to get to know anybody,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody's ever really going to get to know me.
So let me just put you on the spot a moment here. How long did you have to work on your hairdo before you came on this podcast?
Yeah, right. I think I combed the beard for like 5 seconds beforehand in the mirror. Yeah, but
So what's life? I started combing my beard as well.
yeah, it's weird when you see a bald guy pull out a comb.
Love it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's just talk a little bit more about the perception for guys that come into this spot of intentionally engaging the emotions internally and externally expressing them has been a bit of a how do you say it? Yeah, talk a little bit about that from your experience. Why it seems that it's culturally more awkward for guys to get to this level of enmeshing life with emotional, responsive communication.
Okay, so let's start off with one thing. It is appropriate in the culture that we live in the North American culture that we live in, and most cultures really, for men
Mhm.
to express emotions, but only a
Okay.
certain type of emotions. We
Okay.
can express aggression, we can express anger, we can express frustration, right?
Hmm.
We can express excitement over competition,
Sure.
right?
Yeah.
We can
Yeah.
express love and joy over a new baby being born,
Hmm.
right? So those
Yeah.
those things are culturally acceptable ways for men to express emotions.
Fair
But
enough.
what's not culturally acceptable is when men express emotions that could be perceived as vulnerable or weak.
Mm.
Things like sadness and fear and pain and hurt and loneliness, right? Those kinds of emotions, and there's a whole list of them.
Hmm.
Those are the types of emotions that the culture that you and I live in don't necessarily make space for men.
Mm.
Um, and I think that's the disconnect. And the reason I feel is based
Hmm.
upon this idea that Tony Porter came up with. It's called the man box. It's called the man box culture. So men are expected from a very young age. I forget the exact age, but it's around anywhere from, I believe it's between 5 and 8 years old, when boys start interacting with other boys, typically in a schoolyard environment,
Hmm.
where where pressures will start to be put on them to act a certain way and to think a certain way and to dress a certain way. And it happens with other gender identifying people as well, but I'm talking about men specifically here. So
Hmm.
we're expected to dress a certain way or act a certain way, say words a certain way, right? Not show weakness, right? We're supposed to be the fastest, the strongest.
Hmm.
We're supposed to be able to beat everybody up and all of that stuff, right? And I know for me, I was never that person.
Hmm.
I was always the skinny kid who
Hmm.
was uncoordinated and could never play the game right. I mean, there's a story of me playing a basketball game in a school basketball game. I think it was in the sixth or seventh grade. I don't know what it was, but I was not first string, and I was like I got in the game finally, and I was just so beyond myself. And finally, I managed to get the ball, and I'm just going for it, right? And there's nobody in front of me, And I'm like, God, I can't believe it. I'm running faster than everybody else. And everybody else is making all these noise and just yelling and yelling and
Yeah.
yelling. And of
Yeah.
course, I'm just going and going and going. And then I go up and I make this beautiful layup and I beat all the opponents and everything, right? And I
Yeah.
turn around and everybody's got their hands in their heads. And my coach is just shaking his head. And I'm like, what? And then so one of the teammates comes up and he punches me really hard in the arm and he goes, "You jerk, you made a basket for the other team."
Oh,
I
shoot.
felt absolutely mortified, absolutely mortified. You know, that
Yeah.
was my experience with sports, right? So
Yeah.
yeah, so I was, needless to say, I was picked on and I was ridiculed and
Yeah.
shamed for that for the better part of the rest of the school year. And I never wanted to step on the basketball court again. I think I may have even quit the basketball team at that point. I don't know. Anyway, it was mortifying.
Hmm.
So there was no culture that in that at that time that would allow for somebody to walk up to me and say, "It's okay. You did the best you could. Try harder next time."
Mm.
No, the culture that was there at that time, this man box culture, says that all
Mm.
the boys on the team and the coaches and even parents
Mm.
have to ridicule me and make fun of me and never
Mm.
let me forget it because that's competitiveness, right? You made a mistake. I'm never going to let you forget this mistake, right? And
Mm.
I'm going to make you feel shame for it.
Mm.
So that's kind of the culture that I feel that we live in.
Mm.
And we're not creating space for articulation of emotions. We're not creating space for all the spectrum of emotions. We're only creating space for the ones that we feel comfortable working with. But the minute we get uncomfortable, right, that's when we start to shut down. That's when we don't have any place to put it. When was the last time you had a conversation about your emotional capacities with any male friends in your life?
This past weekend.
Well, see, and you're lucky.
That's, I know, I know.
And that's probably why I'm here, right? But I can tell you that maybe some of the people listening to this down the road at some point now or whenever
Mhm.
might not be there yet.
Yeah. No, I'll definitely say my experience is not experienced by the majority for the most part. So I totally agree with you there. Yeah.
We are unique, but I would also maybe think that maybe we've done some work.
Yeah.
We've
True.
we've we've put in the effort and the work to be able to get to a point to where we can recognize
Mm.
that these kinds of conversations can be empowering and they can lead to a strength that we've never felt before.
Something I've experienced in my last few months just with online participation and involvement is a growing sense of hope that there's such a resonance, Greg, with a lot of young guys, primarily, a lot of young guys who are coming and participating, engaging, especially from the point of scarcity in what this is all about, but interest, keen interest in that. So that's encouraging, I find.
Mm.
I'd like you to talk a little bit, like, because they'll be listening to this podcast as well, I'm certain. Um, could you just explain to those who are maybe on the periphery or those who are saying, I'm not sure why this is such a big deal? Like, I've just survived so long in this man box culture. Just
Hmm.
talk to the listeners a little bit about why they should even consider maybe moving towards this trajectory of learning how to effectively communicate internally and express and that kind of thing from a guy's perspective.
Uh, well, I can speak from my perspective
Sure
because
enough.
I've been on the other end of that spectrum. I've been the guy that was like, yeah, I hate emotions. I don't want to deal with them. I don't know if I can cuss on here, but is
Absolutely.
it
Here,
okay?
absolutely. Here's the thing. I like straight up. This is
Okay. All right.
unchoreographed. So,
So I refer to myself as a recovering asshole.
mhm.
I used to be a very difficult and challenging person to be around. I was a very judgmental man. I was in a lot of pain. There was a lot of sadness and a lot of deep, deep resentment in me for my parents and for the people in my life that were continually letting me down. And I was carrying that around with me everywhere that I went. And it became a part of me. It became a part of the fiber of my existence. And I
Mhm.
didn't even know it. I was unconscious about it. But
Mhm.
I did know somewhere deep down inside that if I didn't get this out, if I didn't find a way to move past this and through it, that it was going to kill me. Maybe it might kill me because my body might start to react to it and stress and get ulcers and heart attacks and high blood pressure. Or maybe it'll kill me because I'll make a dumb decision and I'll get into a fight with the wrong person, right? Or maybe it'll kill me because I'll go flying off the handle and go get drunk and then drive a car and kill myself or kill somebody else.
Mhm.
But I knew that if I continued down the road that I was going and I didn't deal with the emotions, that I was going to die,
Mm.
or frankly, even worse, kill somebody. Because it was that hard. It was that. So that's what the man box culture does, is it forces us to continually shove down these uncomfortable and challenging emotions,
Mhm.
right? Because nobody wants to talk about that shit,
Mhm.
right? And even if you do, even if we are talking about it, we're still talking about it in a very cursory kind of a way. We're not getting into the dark shadows of it. We're not
Mhm.
talking about why they're there.
Mhm.
What happened in my life? What happened in your life that makes you see that you are unable to share this part of who you are with anybody in the world,
Mhm.
right? The amount of fear and the amount of pain underneath that is
Mhm.
what, in my opinion, that's
Mhm.
what causes the violence that we have against women,
Mhm.
right? Men try to control the women in their lives. Men try to make them do what they want to do, not because, honestly, not because they want the power trip, but because they were afraid. They're trying to control everything because they're afraid that if they don't, that
Mhm.
they're going to be worthless, that they're going to be shamed, that they're going to that their brothers or their father or whatever is going to see them as a piece of shit who can't keep his life together, right?
Mhm.
It's the pain. It's the same reason. Emotions are the single most, with the exception of a few sort of physical functions that we have to do, like eating and sleeping and bathroom and that kind of stuff. Emotions, and even those things can often be driven by emotional needs. But our emotional needs are the single biggest driver in everything that we do.
Mhm.
Period. I'm
Mhm.
talking to you today
Mhm.
from an emotional place because I believe firmly that
Mhm.
by getting these stories out there and by sharing them with the world, that it can make a difference. And that
Mhm.
matters to me. And emotionally, that makes me feel empowered. That makes me feel like I have a purpose, right? It makes me feel good.
Mhm.
It's the
Mhm.
same reason that you're doing the podcast to begin with,
Mhm.
right? It makes you feel like you matter. It makes you feel like
Yeah.
you're giving something back to the world by
Mhm.
being real and honest and leading with your weaknesses, you said.
Sure enough. Sure.
The more we lead, and I love that, by the way, the more we lead with our weaknesses, the more
Mhm.
we can really show up in other people's lives and in our own lives. And I think that we would see violence decrease. I think that
Mhm.
we would see abuse decrease. I think that we would see drug addiction decrease,
Mhm.
right? I
Yeah.
really, really believe it 100% that at the root of
Yeah.
all of that is
Yeah.
emotional disconnection and our inability to be able to master our emotions effectively.
I was thinking about something just snapped into my memory when you were saying I was even ready to kill. Like if I didn't intend to. A lot of my viewers don't know about my past. Part of my past was a struggle, an internal vicious struggle with violent expression of anger.
Mhm.
It was there, and not many people outside the family knew it. Actually, not no one outside the family knew it, but my family definitely knew it. My brothers definitely knew it. As oldest of like three siblings, two other brothers at this time, I was just a loose cannon. So if anything just came across my, like if it displeased me, Greg, I can remember moments when, in the heat of the passion that I was experiencing internally, that I vented by violent beatings. I actually didn't care if I even killed my brother. I
Yeah.
didn't care. It was just so like I'm on a mission right here to express all this rage kind of thing. And so, yeah, I know it rings true to me. And I mean, that whole process to even acknowledge first, wow, like this is where I'm at, and then to start, moving incrementally towards something different, was, yeah, a real process. So
Where
it's real.
where does it? I'm going to put you on the spot now
Sure
because I
thing. Go
did
ahead.
I didn't know that about you. So thank you for sharing
Yeah.
that with me.
Yeah.
I too struggled with the same thing. I struggled with the
Mhm.
same levels of anger, and I
Yeah.
reached a point where I just didn't care anymore.
Sure.
And it got scary. It got really scary.
Mm-hmm.
When did you realize that you needed to change? Was there a breaking point? Was there a moment
It
where you
was great.
said,
The breaking point for me, Greg, was, something my mom said after one of my violent outbursts. I mean, during them, she'd plead, say, Biniam, please stop. Like, stop. I was just oblivious. But something she said actually snapped inside me when she said, Biniam, I don't know who you are. Like outside, people think you're this angel, but here at home, you're like a devil. Who are you? Is the question. And if there's something I knew at the very core at that time already, Greg, was that I did not want to be a two-face. I didn't want to be a hypocrite. I've lived for a long time as a hypocrite in different ways, but in this one area, I was just like, oh crap, she's totally right. I do not like this assessment that I can be seen as a two-face. I need to bring alignment in some way to this discrepancy that I'm experiencing internally and the way I'm portraying myself externally. And my mandate at that time was, I need to bring address to this present state that I'm in. Not only that was a point of acknowledgement for me, but it took another 2 years of just watching it unfold over and over, and then just watching it carefully and saying, so what's happening here? Why am I losing it? Just almost like an internal calibration of observation that was being amassed. And then to the point where I incrementally started, moving back from that precipice of violent outbursts. It was really driven by the desire to have my family say the same thing as people outside the home, that the account would be consistent. And that was what really drove me, because I wanted for myself personally to be the same person, not to be like a all over the place this way. That was what drove me to address it in the initial point when the mom said that, and then in the follow through saying, how can I become that person who is different in the way he expresses himself?
So it was an integrity thing, it sounds like.
It really was, yes.
Yeah, good. Thank you for sharing that with me.
You're welcome. A lot of people don't see that. They look at me and they're like, yeah, I don't believe that at all. And they need like factual evidence, and I have to take them to my brothers as well. But yeah, I guess so complete has that revolution come, in the way, like, for example, I was out on a walk with some guy friends of mine, and we were just kind of checking how each other are doing. And I just had to be upfront and say, honestly, guys, I had a great weekend with the kids, but I lost it with my son on the drive home from my place to home. I was just helping him review some of his vocabulary words, but he's, expressing lethargy and not interested, Dad. And I just didn't have any. So I snapped in a way that is uncharacteristic. And I had to, like, since then, it's been kind of like unsettled zone in my mind where I was like, that wasn't necessary, the way I expressed my displeasure, in what I was observing from him. And I'm going to need to have some talk with him afterwards later this evening when I call him up and say, Dad was out of line. That was not fair. And that was just expressing this, even as openly as I am, is just my way, again, of saying, I'm still trying to figure things out. And when I drop the ball, I look for those opportunities, just because with most of my viewers, Greg, they only see the good side, and they're always asking, how are you always so positive and happy? And my desire, Greg, is to reframe that question and say, I'm not always positive or happy, because I don't think it's always possible to live at that high precipice that I might be presenting. There's a life of ups and downs. I'd probably phrase it as, I think I live in contentment, that stability that is able to appropriate the highs and lows, experience them for what they are, but just enter into that. And especially with the lows, which they don't see as often, I'm thinking, how can I intentionally share those with them, just so that they can see how I model how I process my fumbles as well.
Mm-hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, I mean, that goes back to what we talked about earlier about personal responsibility, right? Mm-hmm. So you took ownership of your behavior with your son. And you turned it into an opportunity to teach him that, hey, look, I'm not perfect, and you're not going to be perfect, but this is the responsible way, the effective, the healthy way of dealing with uncomfortable emotions when they come up. There's another piece to that too that I want to share with you and with your audience, and that is that one of the most profound tools that I came across, and I came across this tool very recently, and I'm a little pissed off at the universe that I didn't get this one brought to me sooner, because it would have been really, really helpful a long time ago. But I'm grateful. I'm grateful now that I have it, and it's a really, really simple tool. The tool is this idea that emotions are neither good nor bad. They are comfortable or they're uncomfortable, and they're not always obvious. So I'll give you an example. So a comfortable emotion for somebody, for you, when you were struggling with your anger and being able to regulate your emotions, a comfortable emotion for you might have been anger.
Yeah.
And an uncomfortable emotion for you might have been joy,
Mm,
right? So it's not always obvious. But
mhm,
most people think, oh, yeah, anger bad, joy good.
mm.
But when we
So,
black and white it to that point, we do
mm,
the human experience such a disservice because there's so much nuance and so much of a spectrum that happens between
mhm,
uncomfortable and comfortable, right? And
mhm,
so, I mean, the right before this podcast today, I
mhm,
was feeling uncomfortable. I was excited, but I was uncomfortable with that
mhm,
because I was
yeah,
afraid I would mess it up and I would look like an idiot. And I'd
mhm,
be, people would be like, "Oh God, who's this guy? He's just a jackass. Get
mhm,
off the screen." You know what I mean? Or I don't want to listen to him anymore, right? So that's like my
mhm,
worst fear is that people are
mhm,
gonna think I don't know what the hell I'm doing. I mean, between you and
mhm.
me, I don't. But that's beside the point. But
Doing well, my friend. You're doing well. Yeah.
uh, but the reality is that that
Mhm,
was the single biggest tool that I found in my life recently. That's really, really
mhm,
helped me to be able to look at my emotions differently. So in situations where it's like, you know what, I overreacted to a situation with my son, and it
mhm,
felt really uncomfortable. Not I'm
mhm,
a piece of shit and I'm a bad father,
mhm, mhm.
because that's the conversation. That kind of conversation leads to anger and frustration and resentment and shame. But owning your actions and saying, I probably need to work on that and do that better next time,
Mhm.
right? Because I felt really uncomfortable in that moment with
Sure,
something that was happening, maybe
sure.
unrelated to what was going on with him, but I
Mhm,
still took it out on him. I still
mhm,
expressed it to him,
mhm.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
And then that becomes a teachable moment for your son as well. So he can
Mhm,
see dad is not perfect. And this
mhm,
is how a man
mhm,
handles his
mhm.
emotions effectively.
Yeah, yeah. That's really good. I wrote that down. I'm gonna think about on
Yeah.
that.
So
That's awesome.
I do my best to even when I'm talking to people to
Yeah.
step away from words like good or bad, right and wrong, right?
Uh-huh.
It's
Yeah.
uncomfortable or it's comfortable. It's in alignment. It's not in alignment. These right and wrong, good, bad judgment words don't really serve me very well anymore.
Especially because they're so binary and so extreme as
Oh,
opposed to
so extreme.
that.
Yeah, absolutely
Yeah,
polarizing.
yeah, yeah.
Polarizing.
That's good. Greg, this whole shift, you were mentioning personal responsibility at the beginning and even halfway through here. I just want to ask you, what was the catalyst that got you on this trajectory in life where you're like, here's what I really want to hone in on, especially in the way I'm experiencing it and the way I'm communicating to others about what it means to me. What was the catalyst that got this on your radar?
Well, I don't know that there was one particular catalyst. There was a series
Okay.
of events that happened
Hmm.
that really, really shook my world. And most recently, back in June of this year, I had a nervous breakthrough.
Okay.
It was a breakdown, but I reframe it as a breakthrough.
Okay.
I had a full-on nervous breakdown that
Uh,
became a breakthrough because for me, it was an opportunity, and the details of it don't matter. But that's when I started to find out about things like emotional dysregulation and uncomfortable versus comfortable and all of this other stuff because I went through a very intensive program um, here in Calgary, and I'll recommend it to anybody. It's called Day Hospital. Um,
okay.
and it's an incredible program. And they
Hmm.
basically taught me how to work with my emotions, how to see my emotions and reframe them in very different ways. And it was a wonderful experience for me. And I realized coming out of that I have a certain skill set, as we all do. We're all good at something. And one of the
Hmm.
things that I'm really good at is sharing information, is talking with people, is
Hmm.
getting up and sharing what I know and what I hear and what I've learned, right? And so
Hmm.
I kind of feel like it's sort of my responsibility
Hmm.
to get this idea out to the world that we can master our emotions and that we can
Hmm.
develop ourselves in healthy and effective ways that can create closer, deeper, more meaningful connections with ourselves and with the people around us.
Hmm.
So it wasn't one moment per se, like you said
Yeah.
there was a defining moment. There wasn't a defining moment for me because I've been on this
Okay.
journey for most of my life.
Yeah.
I've been an emotion. I was a very emotional child. Was diagnosed with ADHD back in the day. Um, I was a very, very difficult and challenging kid to manage because
Hmm.
of my emotions.
Yeah.
And I've been flying by the seat of my pants most of my life frankly.
Mm,
I've been very blessed and very lucky to have some incredible people in my life that have been very patient and understanding with me.
mm,
Um, and yeah, but I would say that it just sort of the straw that broke the camel's back was in June of this
mm,
year with the
mm,
pandemic and everything that was happening in my life with that. I have since retired from that job, and now I'm stepping into a new career and stuff as an entrepreneur and everything.
mm,
So it's exciting times for sure. But
mm,
that would be the last sort of catalyst moment that was like,
mm.
I've got to do something with this now.
I'm going to get to that here in just a few moments here. But you were very clear at the beginning saying you are one of the most privileged individuals. And so my question is, as a privileged individual, how do you communicate to those who are without privilege?
That's
What
a
kind
great
of things do
question.
you put in place so that you are presenting yourself in such a way that, yeah, let me leave
Yeah.
it there.
What comes up for me immediately when you ask when you ask me that question is ask questions.
Mm,
I don't know. I don't know your experience as a person of
mm,
color. I have no idea what your experience is. So I would ask you, tell me about your experience. Tell me
mm,
what it is that you feel that I should know as the most privileged human being in the world that's going to help me be an ally to you.
mm,
That's what I think we need to start doing. I think the privileged need to recognize and own our privilege and use that privilege as a platform so that others may speak and others may be heard.
mm,
And believe people when they say they've been marginalized or victimized or hurt or abused. Believe them. Um, but yeah, if you don't feel that you have the answer, even if you do feel that you have the answer, check it.
mm,
Check it out. Ask the questions. Does this feel right to you? Reach out to a Muslim, reach out to a black person, reach out to a woman,
mm,
dialogue with them, ask them, hey, look, this is the way, and don't be afraid.
mm,
Don't be afraid to say, this is the way I see it. Is that right? Is that in alignment with the way that you see it?
mm,
Or do I need to investigate my perceptions and my beliefs, my worldview
mm,
more so that I
mm.
can align myself with those who have been marginalized and victimized in this world? Does that make sense?
It does. I love the answer. I'm going to dig a little further. Ask questions, and I love that. Express that kind of interest, curiosity, and draw them out. What is the heart or the feelings that go on inside a privileged person? I'm asking you to describe to get to the point where you're asking in appropriate ways and where it's out of curiosity. Yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a good question. I see what you're saying because you could be asking in very inappropriate ways, or you could be asking in with some sort of an agenda in mind or whatever. And I would say that that's the key is drop your agenda.
Mm, mm,
Drop your agenda. Be curious. Get curious about what's happening in the world around you.
mm,
Because even though you might, you, it's funny because when I say that I'm the most privileged person in the world because of those three things, right? The color of my skin, my gender, and the fact that I live in North America,
mm,
almost invariably people are going to be like some white dude living in North America is going to go say, I'm not privileged because I was born poor. I
mm,
wasn't given anything, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But the reality is that you will never, ever, ever have it as bad as
mm,
somebody who was black and born
mm,
in your situation had it,
mm, mm,
simply because of the color of your skin. That's it. And the minute that we recognize that, and the minute that we own that, we will
mm,
never, as men, you and I, we will never know what it feels like to walk down the street at night for a woman.
mm, mhm,
Never know that fear, ever.
mhm, mhm,
So, how do we find out what that feels like? We ask. And we ask
mhm,
from a place of love, kindness, and curiosity with
mhm,
no agenda. I just want to know how I can be a better ally
mhm,
so that I can take this privilege that I've been blessed with and
mhm.
use it for something positive in this world.
Cool.
Does that answer your question?
It does. It does. Thank you for extrapolating that. That's really helpful. In reference to personal responsibility, in your observation, from your vantage point, what do you see the biggest call to arms that needs to be attended to in general in this North American context?
Oh, there's so many. Um,
Give me the top three.
well,
Let's try the top three.
I'm going to give you the top one, actually, because
Okay.
I think everything else comes from this.
Okay. Okay.
Uh, and I think that's we need to start doing better at creating, at being mindful of the spaces that we create for the people around us.
Okay.
I really believe that we need to get out of our own heads more, and we need to understand that we're all connected, that we're all in this together, that nobody is on an island. Even people on an island are still not on an island because they're still using the things around them to live and to survive. So it's all interconnected. So this
Mm-hmm.
idea of personal responsibility at its core is about reaching out and connecting with the people around you and making sure that because that's the only thing that you really can control, is you.
Mm-hmm.
You are doing everything that you can to
Mm-hmm.
make sure that the people around you feel safe with you,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And that's what you mean when you say we need to make safe spaces for those around us. Is that what you mean?
Absolutely. And but
Okay.
I want to caveat that. What that doesn't
Yeah.
mean
Yeah.
is that we load up a bunch of guns into our houses and lock our doors and just sit there and wait for people to come and get us. That's not the kind of safety that I'm talking about. The kind of
Mm-hmm.
safety that I'm talking about is emotional safety. This idea that it's okay for somebody to disagree with you
Mm-hmm.
about something,
Right.
but still like you and still be connected to you because
Mm-hmm.
you value them and you respect them as a human being. You might not agree with their political views at all, right? But that
Mm-hmm.
but but it's incumbent
Yeah.
upon us as individuals to make sure that we're doing what we can to create safe spaces for everybody around us and have those conversations in an effective and healthy way that try
Mm-hmm.
to create connection and understanding versus
Mm-hmm.
creating divisiveness and disconnection.
Mm-hmm. In essence, giving them that same gift of like humanity, that we're equals even as we figure things out.
Mhm.
Yeah, yeah, that's good.
Yeah. Value
Yeah,
your fellow
yeah,
human.
yeah. I resonate strongly with that. Um, let's talk about legacy, Greg. What kind of legacy are you hoping uh, to leave behind?
I honestly hadn't started thinking about that question until recently, and I don't know
Okay.
that I have a complete picture of what that looks like. But I
Mm,
think I think what comes to mind for me when you ask me that question, so I'll just go with my emotions here on this one.
yes, yes, I love it.
Um, I want people to know that it's okay to feel whatever you're feeling. I want my legacy to be the guy that started the revolution of emotional mastery.
Mm. Emotional mastery.
Emotional mastery. Yeah, the idea that I can have an emotion. It can be a comfortable one or an uncomfortable one, but I am still in control of who I am, and I am
Mm,
still responsible for the way I act and
mm,
react to
mm,
situations.
mm,
And I can come from a place of love and value to other people and integrity, even in the most difficult emotions, even in
mm,
the most uncomfortable and challenging and
mm,
and fucked up ones. Excuse the French, right? Because that's
mm,
where the real work starts. So my
mm,
legacy,
mm,
I don't know. That's a big word, legacy. Hey,
mm.
um,
It's huge, but again, it's like what you're leaving behind by way of worth for others to enjoy. Really, that's how I think of it, right? And that's what you're describing right there.
yeah, love. I want a legacy of love. I want a legacy of kindness and respect and decency, and I
Hmm.
want people to understand that nobody's perfect,
Hmm.
and it's all okay. Whatever you're feeling, whatever you're thinking, whatever you're going through
Hmm.
right now, it's
Hmm.
okay. So
Hmm.
I don't know.
That's
Does that
beautiful.
answer the question?
That's beautiful. Yeah, I like it. I like it. It resonates again. I think it's, yeah, that's really good. Describe what you're doing right now entrepreneurially, this new venture you're moving into, Greg, and
Yeah,
what you're hoping to accomplish
right
as
on.
you.
Well, thank you for bringing that up. Yeah, I'm super excited about it, but I'm also scared shitless at the same time. So, see, uncomfortable and comfortable at the same time.
Fantastic. Yeah.
So I'm stepping into personal development, life coaching. I've been doing speaking before. And so, yeah, I'm really, really excited about it. I'm excited about working with people, clients one-on-one, as well as starting group coaching.
Mm,
And then, once the world opens back up again and it's safe to do so, getting out there and doing workshops and doing speaking events
mm,
and stuff like that. I'm really, really super excited about it. I'm actually right before this call, I was working on my website, so hopefully I'll have that up by the end of the month. And I've got my social media stuff, so I've got the Sentient Warrior on IG, and then I've got my name, Greg Million, on Facebook. So follow
mhm,
those for now, and there'll be more updates as things come around. But yeah, I'm super excited about it. I really, really feel like I can be of service to people, and I guess that's part of that legacy too, is a
mhm,
legacy of service to others
mhm,
in making sure that I'm doing everything that I can to give back
mhm,
to those people who might need that.
mhm.
And if that resonates with anyone, then I would love to work with them, and I'd love to be able to do whatever I can to help them, and see how we can create a world of 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 human beings that understand the power in
Mhm.
emotional expression and
Mm,
understand the power of personal responsibility and vulnerability.
mm. That's so good. Greg, I usually close and we'll do that recap again of where people can find you just so that they have another opportunity to hear it again. Um, this has been really rich. I want to ask you as well, what kind of questions do you have for me? Do you have a question that you're like, Biniam, tell me a little bit more about this?
Yeah, I want to know what the motivation is for doing this.
Mm, I love it. You're gifted in asking short, concise questions. I'm gifted in love it, Greg. My motivation, great question. My motivation is to share what's going on internally here, which I think is something fantastic and good, transformative. I've been in a season over the last few years, just being actually for a long time, I've been experiencing a lot of joy internally by the way I engage and interact with people. I've seen consistency over the long haul in the way that I'm able to help people feel. But it just seems like a crime, Greg, to just keep it here for myself and not to actually share what I'm finding works for me. So my motivation, Greg, is to share what's going on internally here, which I think there's a lot of beautiful things. I'm a realistic optimist is how I see myself. A realistic optimist. What I mean by that is um, I'm realistic when I'm placing expectations of those around me and myself too. And that for me at this point in time is that we're all in progress. We're all in process, you know. I'm very aware of my fumbles as I'm working my way to a better version of myself. Um, and so being aware of that, I want to give that same gift to others and saying, hey, you as you are, like you were saying, Greg, are good where you're at. And I'd love to love you for who you are, not to prescribe what you could be. I want to take you where you're at and say, how can I work with you? How can I engage with you? How can I connect with you without saying, you should be this and I'll be more happy?
Hmm.
Give me who you are. And then the optimistic part is that I see good things in your future and I want to stick my oar into the water, rowing with you towards what that could look like for you. So that realistic optimist that says, hey, I'm taking you as you are, and I'd like to go through life with you together towards something more purposeful, towards something more, as we work together, it's again saying, what does this look like for you? How are you experiencing it? How can I encourage you? What do you need from me? How can I be your biggest fan along the sidelines?
Right.
This is my intention as I engage in the way that I've been engaging. And it's just to say it's not all bleak. And I know for myself, I get a lot of questions, for example, Greg, about how do I deal with anxiety or depression? That's some of the two heavy hitters I hear often. I'm not sure I have experience with that personally, so I don't know that I have anything to say to that as you would have, because you have actually walked down that pathway. I don't know what that looks like, but for me, I do seem happy-go-lucky all the time. It's just because I'm consistently thinking, hey, here's what could be, and I'm usually aiming for that. And it's just my invitation to those who are inclined to join in my journey
Mhm.
and say, let's see what kind of community we can experience together that has this forecast of wonderful investment in each other.
Right on.
Thank
Right
you.
on.
That's a great question.
That's a great answer. I love it.
Thank you. Thank you. Greg, I wanted to just once again repeat where our listeners, our viewers can find you because, again, I can't help but think there has been so much you've given us by way of value in this conversation that they wouldn't want to be following up and saying, can we have a more conversation? So,
Yeah, please.
saying Instagram.
Yeah. So the Instagram is the sentient warrior. So it's the and then the word sentient, SENTIENT, and then warrior.
Yes.
And then I think you might actually be able to search my name on Instagram too, but I'm not sure. So just try the Sentient Warrior. And then the other one, Facebook right now is just my name, first and last, Greg Million. And million is spelled just like the number, MILLION.
And somehow we got to get you on TikTok. Somehow.
I'm on TikTok, but I don't use it.
You don't use it.
No, I don't use it. I
I'll
don't use it.
I'll work you out. I'll work you
Yeah.
out.
Yeah. Yeah. You and Leanne, she's trying to get me on it too, but not yet. Not yet. But yeah. Yeah. So, and then the website, like I said,
Yes.
it'll be up and running hopefully by the end of the month. And that's at least that's the plan anyway. And then I'll be making announcements on my social media platforms about that. And then I don't know if I can send that information to you and you can update your viewers and followers with that too, if you like. So
When Leanne opened her TikTok, I very much featured her stuff, saying, "Hey, come check out Leanne." And
yeah.
do the same when you are at that point. I'll be happy to say, "Let me give a hat tip here." So
Oh,
that would
cool.
be
Thank you. That'd be awesome.
my
Thanks. I
pleasure.
appreciate that for sure.
I'm thankful for your friendship. I'm thankful for the intentional way you engage and ask, and you've got some resonating perspectives that says I'm rowing in the same direction with you, brother. So thank you
I
for the way
feel that. I feel
you
that.
have
I felt
given.
that the minute that the first time we had that conversation. Absolutely.
I remember.
Uh,
I
I
remember.
adore you. I think you're great.
Thank you, brother. I appreciate that. So thankful for you guys. Thanks again, guys, for being on the Bincast. We were featuring Greg. And so, again, get in touch with him if you're so inclined to learn more. He's got so much more that he's held back, I'm certain, but we only have that hour frame reference here. And so, thank you again, Greg. Much love to you, brother. And thanks, everyone, for watching and listening.
Yes. Thank you. And thanks everyone for watching and listening.
Okay, bye for now.
Bye.